My name is John Passfield, and the title of this reading will be John and Mother Goose, Video 17, John's Reaction to Jack, Part 1. Here's my novella, John and Mother Goose, the Carnival of Tales with John and Mother Goose, surrounded by mythical characters, the characters in the nursery rhyme verses. And on the back cover, here's a summary. While driving his granddaughter home from daycare, John suddenly finds himself standing in the midway of a carnival of Mother Goose fairy tales. He's greeted by Jack, of Jack and Jill fame, who tells John that Mother Goose is expecting him as she has a role for him to play. But what does Mother Goose want? Why does she think of John as a writer of detective stories? And why, when she meets John, does she greet him as almost a long-lost son? And for that matter, why do so many of the fairy tale characters have different stories they want John to write for them, instead of the ones in which they've lived for hundreds of years? John is not a mythical creature. He's only human, after all. But can he save the Mother Goose Carnival? Can he solve the mystery of the vanishing fairy tales? So, when John suddenly finds himself standing in front of a stage at the Mother Goose Carnival of Tales, he's met not by Mother Goose, but by Jack, of Jack and Jill fame. Rather mysteriously, Jack tells John that he would like to talk to him later, as he has something that he would like to present to John that he, Jack, doesn't want Mother Goose to know. So as Mother Goose and Jack take turns showing John around the midway and introducing John to the nursery rhyme characters, John keeps his own counsel as he tries to figure out the relationship between Jack and Mother Goose. Now in Chapter 2, John speaks to Mother Goose in Jack's presence, and then after Jack leaves, John does some thinking, which includes John's anticipation of a future meeting with Jack. So let's go to page 10. This is right back at the beginning of John's introduction to these people, these characters, these mythicals. So we're looking for page 10 here. Okay, here's John speaking when he meets Mother Goose. I'm a little old for fairy tales, but I remember them from my youth. I'd have known you anywhere, Mother Goose. Though Jack, I wouldn't have known. Now, was it the beanstalk or the candlestick? Boys named Jack, I recall, seemed to people the fairy tales. I have 3 wonderful grandchildren. Perhaps you already know. They grew up singing nursery rhymes. They learned them at home and at school. I didn't know there was a carnival. This whole scene is a big surprise. Reminds me of the days when I was a boy. The farmer's field, the tents, the stages, the curious crowds. These stories, I'm sure, go back through eons of time. I don't know how I got here, but there's some questions I'd like to ask, if you don't mind. So that's John speaking to Mother Goose in Jack's presence. Now, as Jack leaves, as you'll see in a moment, John thinks about the future meeting. What's going to happen there? It's almost time for Jack's performance, so that leaves Mother Goose and I. We continue along the midway, a small crowd at every stage. The humans don't seem to see us. Only the characters see Mother Goose and say hello. Jack said he had something to tell me. I wonder how long I'll get to be here. I assume I'll get to talk with him again. I can't see anything but farm fields. Cars in a parking lot? None I can see. Is the clothing from different eras? Different centuries, it seems to me. People don't seem to notice one another. For sure they don't notice me. It's as if I've gone back and I'm having a childhood dream. So that's Chapter 2. Now in Chapter 3, John walks around with Mother Goose. So we'll go to Chapter 4. Where he speaks to Jack again. So in Chapter 4, John speaks to Jack, and then when he's alone, he considers what he has learned about the situation and applies logic as to the implications of Jack's aspirations. So let's go to page 26 and have a look. Here we are. So first John speaks to Jack. I'm certainly flattered by your offer, Jack. Now, Jack has offered to tell John a story that he'd like John to write for him and that he can act in and presumably live in instead of the fairy tale Jack and Jill went up the hill. So I'm certainly flattered by your offer, Jack. How kind of you to want to help me out. But I assure you that I'm not now and never have been a sufferer from such a disease as writer's block. I have a dozen projects waiting outside my door. They squeeze themselves in and make a pitch whenever I open the door a crack to fetch the newspaper to go out for a breath of air. But if you don't mind my asking, Jack, I'm sure you'll be candid with me. How'd you know that I was a writer, and what makes you think that I'm in need of aid? In need of hearing stories that I can write when I already have plenty to write on my own. Okay, so that's John speaking to Jack. Here's John thinking about Jack on his own. I don't really care for Jack. There's something about this whole situation that isn't quite right. Jack says he intends to tell me a story. Jill tells me one as well. So stay calm, John, and do some thinking. Thinking has always been your forte. Now, the topic is never the topic. This is an adage that I firmly believe. So I'll look beneath the surface and see what I can see. Whose idea was it to bring me here by whatever unknown means it has been achieved? The answer, it seems to me, will be the needed, the essential clue. No, I don't run ahead of the bloodhounds, but I can sense the smell of red herring as I pause for a moment and sniff with discernment the air, while keeping my eye on the true, the actual, the Jack-built mystery that only I, apparently alone, am able, it seems, to see. Surface logic says that it was Mother Goose to save her enterprise. Most detectives would stop right there, gaze at the mountains amidst the burrows under their feet. But suppose, to take the less well-traveled surmise, it just might be our boy Jack, of Jack and Jill fame, whose motive just might be to escape from his present situation, his eternal situation, at the expense of Mother Goose and her enterprise. Now, assuming that I'm on the right track, that I have sniffed with my mind the telltale spoor, if Jack were to take a role in another story, followed by Jill and all the other characters, if they were to change their stories too, the Mother Goose midway would be as empty as a ghost town, and there would be no more traditional nursery rhymes. So using human logic, John figures he's on to something. We don't always tell other people what we're thinking. In fact, we don't always know what we're thinking. John finds it rather difficult to put two seemingly disparate elements together. Here's number one. On the one hand, he's been brought to the Mother Goose Carnival of Tales by Mother Goose, who is concerned that some of her fairy tale characters are going missing. Each day when she strolls to Midway, she finds another empty fairy tale stage. So she asks John, whom she assumes is a writer-detective, to try to figure out why so many fairy tale characters are missing. Now, number two, how do you put these two together? On the other hand, in a seemingly unrelated series of events, Jack, as he strolls along the Midway with John and introduces him to the fairy tale characters, at the behest of Mother Goose, tells John about the story in which he would rather act instead of the story for which he's been created. So how to put those two together? What's going on here is John's question. Now, John is not a detective, but he decides to try his best to figure out the logic of how these two seemingly disparate, seemingly separate, seemingly unconnected situations just might be related. Well, this is part one of John's reaction to Jack. Perhaps as the story goes on, John, who's a writer but not a detective writer, despite what Mother Goose believes, just might become a detective after all. So we'll have to look at part two to see what happens. So this is my novella, John and Mother Goose, The Carnival of Tales. It's found on Amazon, where there's more information. It's found on my publisher's website, which is roxmillspress.com, where there's also more information. At my website, johnpassville.ca, there are two free books. One is the planning notebook that I wrote as I was planning and writing this novella. The other is the reflective journal that I wrote while I was polishing, for a month or 6 weeks or so, this novella. All the topics that such a story brings to mind. So have a look. Just click on the cover icons on my website, johnpassville.ca, if you'd like to have a look at those two free books about this particular novella. Lastly, I'll just say thank you for watching this video.